I'll ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes is 7 p.m. and I'll call this meeting to order. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those as able, please stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous people of Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Before beginning tonight, I would like to note that we do have regrets from Councillor Johnson and Councillor Rothwell for everyone's awareness. All right. Welcome to everyone that's joining us in the chamber and online this evening on the YouTube channel. As everyone knows, it's live and then it will also be archived for future viewing. I'm looking for, at this point, a motion to approve the agenda. Sorry, I should go back. Does anyone have anything to disclose, pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? As everyone will know, you can declare it now or at any point in the meeting. Okay. Seeing none, now I'll be looking for a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Moved by Councillor Blazek and seconded by Councillor Andreessen. We can have the vote for that, please. Thank you, and that is carried. All right. Next, we'll be looking for our consent agenda, reviewing that. We have one consent item on that this evening, and that's the North Perth budget meeting minutes from October 18th, 2023. Those were circulated for viewing. Does anyone have any comments on that consent agenda item? Okay, seeing none. I'm looking for a motion that the minutes of the October 18th, 2023 budget meeting be adopted. Moved by Deputy Mayor Callum, seconded by Councillor Richardson. I'll have the vote for that, please. And that is carried. Thank you. All right. The next point in our agenda is we'll be moving into our 2024 departmental business plan summary. All right. And that's going to be done by the department heads, I believe. So we'll begin with CEO Snell.
Thank you, Budget Chair Anstead. So just before I get into my department business plan, just going to have a few overall comments, both regarding the process and just the e-books. So I'd like to begin by saying this year's a particularly challenging budget year, I would say, in my recent memory. This has been one of the toughest budget years for North Perth, and I think, in speaking to other colleagues, it's being sort of the common theme across municipalities and even some of our third-party funding agencies, such as the conservation authorities. And I think this is due to inflationary pressures that we're all experiencing, as well as sort of the instability in some of the in the industry. So I'd certainly like to thank the department heads for working through this. I think we've presented as fair a budget as possible. We've worked really hard to get it down to where it is. We tried to make sure there was nothing going forward that was too lucrative. So having said that, there's not a lot of wiggle room. There's even in tonight's presentation, we haven't even included the school bus arm project that was talked about on Monday. So we'll have to add some funds for that, and we can have that conversation later on. And then second of all to that is certainly with some key members in the finance department missing through the budget process. I'm certainly like to thank the finance staff and certainly Becky and her team for working through everything. It's been challenging, but everybody stepped to the plate, and we've managed to pull this off and get it before council. So I am going to both do the administration department and then as well as corporate services. I'm not going to go through everything in the business plan. I'm going to really take a look at page 4 of the administration department, which is the overview and outlook. The biggest thing is we still have yet to fully implement the organizational restructuring. So the deputy CEO position is still vacant. We're hoping to have it posted yet by the end of 2023. That was budgeted, but it obviously was not used. And part of the reason for that, we were just trying to replace staff vacancies for already existing positions throughout the year. The projects, again, were all either fully implemented or will continue to be implemented throughout 2024. And the 2024 budget does include all the cost of living allocation for all the departments. The OMPF funding was up slightly, but when I broke it down per household, it's actually down $1 per household. So in some ways, it's not really up at all. It's actually flat or less than flat. And again, in human resources, really nothing's changing going ahead in 2024. We're just continuing to implement our human resources strategic plan. And again, I think we've made huge improvements in 2023, and we'll continue to continue along that path in 2024. I think we've made some big improvements, and certainly thank the HR department for the direction we're heading. The one change in all the business plans is we didn't break down the hours like we have in other years, just partly because it's been a very laborious exercise, so we want to try it without doing it. But we did want all the management to make a comment on their capacity, so council was well aware of it. And I already spoke about the deputy CAO, so hopefully that will resolve some capacity issues in the CAO's office. And the HR department, again, as we grow and continue to grow, we're not looking at any staff potentially in 2024, but if we add new positions like we are, we may need to consider more resources in the HR department. That's administration. Did you want me to do the operating budget now as well? So really the operating budget is fairly flat. We did we did some reallocations in all departments. So as we've went through the budget process, there's some money that was just moved around because it made more sense, or just should have been that way in the first place. So, for example, under council, CO administration, I believe that budget was for taxes in lieu, and it was labeled grants to others. So we've actually just moved that to the finance department because that's where it probably should be, and that's for things like the Legion, who are granted taxes they get tax exemptions under existing legislation. So the change in human resources is really more allocation to both wages, and there's a little bit more money put towards employee recognition and celebrations. For those council don't know, we did have a very successful summer barbecue this year. And we really didn't budget for that, but we were able to find some resources. But it went over really well, so we're just looking to build on those sort of activities in 2024. And I can answer any questions. And if council has any questions about HR, Kelly is here also to assist me.
Thanks, CEO Snell. At this point, council, is there any questions for CEO Snell or Ms. Fraser? Yeah, Councillor Duncan, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering, Chris, the decrease to the council budget, is that due to going to less meetings per month next year, or what does that decrease reflect?
So there was no change in the last meetings because council is going to be paid the same based on a per diem or honorarium. There seemed to be a bit of a surplus, and I've checked back. We weren't using it every year for a lot of that special and extra meetings, so we did reduce that budget a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for CEO Snell at this point, council? Any other questions for Ms. Fraser at this point for any HR issues? Okay. All right, so seeing none, thanks very much, CEO Snell.
So I will continue with corporate services because the position of manager of corporate services is currently vacant, and so I will proceed through corporate services, and certainly Sarah and Becky are here if there's any questions about clerking and financing, and if we have specific questions about IT, we can bring them back to council. Certainly, again, I'm not going to read through the overview, but just highlight on some of the projects that were ongoing in 2023 as well as will continue. Again, council is very aware of the compensation and ward boundary review. The clerk's department's put a lot of work into that and will continue to do so going forward. The governance committee and the provisions of procedural bylaw, I think, have been very successful so far. We look forward to continuing those efforts in 2024 with the governance committee expanding on their mandate to look at other key governance issues in the municipality around committees. And certainly, as a former clerk for even this municipality, corporate records management was always an ongoing struggle. We'll be looking at doing some updates to our corporate services and records management and looking at a system likely to go forward within the future through 2024. In finance, the GL conversion is still underway, but at this point has been I think successful. We've got rid of a lot of accounts. It's still taking staff time to get used to all the new accounts, but I think we're getting there. The accounts payable software certainly has streamlined work for us as managers on the account payable side, and I believe even the accounts payable staff is finding efficiencies. We're still experiencing considerable concerns with our external audit. Auditors are going through the same sort of HR challenges that most of the world is going through, and so we're having struggles keeping up with our auditing with our current. But we're starting the year-end audit hopefully soon. The water and wastewater meter replacement project went very smoothly, both from an operational, environmental side standpoint as well as from a finance standpoint. And I spoke a little bit about the finance division's HR challenges, but certainly the new treasurer, when they start next week, will continue to assess the need for extra positions in the finance department. IT, again, I think it's much the same. They've done a good job around security, the dual multiple factor authentication, which I think all causes some grief from time to time, but we can get through it. And certainly supporting the other departments with IT, the David Street lift connectivity, the Set 7 project, Elizabeth Fire Station phone additions, as well as continuing to look at new software implications and applications as they're integrated into our system. One of the things I know we're looking at for next year is looking at a complete upgrade on our current phone system to better integrate the various locations, because that's certainly a challenge we're experiencing from a customer service standpoint. We'd like to look at a modernization phone system so that we're not bouncing customers back and forth between locations. And our phone system now is hard to believe it's 13 years old. So we'll be looking at that in 2024. I just got to get to the. So the base budget starts, so that in the line of the budget, the 2024 base budget is basically the 2023 approved budget, and we've worked from there. So again, corporate services is more or less flat. We have a couple of one-time items, as well as some inflationary. Most of the costs are in the inflationary impacts. And certainly if there's questions about that, I'm sure Becky or Sarah will be able to answer the specific questions about the two budgets.
Okay, thanks, CEO Snell. At this time, is there any questions for any of those individuals? Go ahead, Councillor Andreessen.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I have a question around, I guess, more the business plan for corporate services regarding the heading around elections. At the last election a year ago, we were informed that we couldn't offer different services for our constituents that would allow them for phone voting or for any kind of web-based voting procedures. And what we were informed at the time was that there wasn't enough time to put that in place. And so I'd really like to see something like that happen for our next election in 3 years. And I want to make sure that that's top of mind so that we have other options for our constituents so that we can hopefully increase the participation rate in the election. So my hope would be that in the next 3 years, there's time spent preparing for those different types of options so that when we hit the election in the next 3 years, we're not at a stage where we can't do it because we don't have enough time. So I just want to bring that as top of mind for consideration as part of preparation and ongoing business plans.
I can certainly answer this, and then Sarah can fill in if there's any gaps. The issue with the last time in hiring, or the gap between the clerks, we did miss the legislative requirements, and that's what the problem was. I can assure you, from what I've already seen from Clerk Klein and Acting Clerk Jamieson is that they're way ahead on looking at the next election, and that will be brought forward to council in due time with lots of time to meet the legislative requirements.
Said.
Your mic up.
I would agree with what CAO Snell said. I know that Clerk Klein has already been looking into it, so no specific budget impacts. It'll fall into current budget for right now.
Thank you, Chair. Instead, it was just helpful to know that, it's on the radar, so to speak, for business plans. Thank you.
No, that's a great point, Councillor Anderson. Any other questions? Councillor Duncan, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just looking at the Conservation Authority budget, and unfortunately I was double booked again tonight, so I had to make a choice whether I was going there or here. They're discussing where they're at budgetary-wise tonight and whether they're going to cover the full shortfall or only a partial shortfall of the budget at the authority. So if they decide to levy the full shortfall, there won't be enough in this budget to cover that. We'll probably be about $13,000 short in this number to cover the full shortfall.
Yes, I'm aware of the two numbers, and we decided for the first phase we would just go with what we hoped would be the outcome, but knowing consideration that we may be short. But neither conservation authorities have set their budget entirely, so these are sort of at this point best guesses. They both conservation authorities have been fairly transparent about trying to give us the best numbers they can, but they're not official. That's the one problem with doing the budget as early as we are. We are still going to be waiting on information from some of our partners. We haven't got the OCIF funding number from province yet either. There's certain things that we're making assumptions on with just the best knowledge we have.
Okay, I just thought I'd make sure that everybody knew where we were at with that. Thanks.
But great point.
Well, thanks, Councillor Duncan. Any other questions at this point? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on.
Thank you, Council.
All right, next we'll invite up our Manager of Strategic Initiatives, Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Chair Anstett, and good evening, Council. I'll just ask the clerk to turn to page 4 of the business plan. Thank you. So I'm just going to summarize some of the key projects and initiatives that are included in the 2024 Strategic Initiatives Business Plan and proposed operating budget. Most of the strategic initiatives project work is reflected in the operating budget, as many of the projects are not asset-based. So to start, I'm going to talk a bit about our plans for housing. At the budget visioning session, Council had requested that the 2024 budget include funds for affordable and attainable housing initiatives. Just over $212,000 is proposed to support implementation of various initiatives that are listed in the Council-approved Housing Action Plan. Some of these projects and funds are carryover from the 2023 budget, for example, the Housing Community Improvement Plan project. The list of initiatives planned for 2024 is listed in the business plan, and municipal investment for these initiatives would decrease if our half submission is successful, so we'll wait and see on that. Next, PC Connect. As approved by Council in September, $160,000 has been included to support North Perth's share of the PC Connect service operating costs for 2024. Also included in the budget and a carryover item from 2023 is the Ag Excellence Project implementation. North Perth was successful in securing RED funding from OMAFRA to support implementation of the Ag Excellence Project. And this funding covers 50% of eligible costs up to just over $130,000. The project timeline for this is September 2023 to March 2026. In terms of Set 7, We have had a very busy fall following the hiring of the training coordinator. We've been able to offer multiple courses throughout the fall in conjunction with course planning for 2024. Set 7 will be working with the technical training group in early 2024 to host Introduction to Construction as a career training program. And this has been supported by grant funding that we received from the Libro Annual Grants Program. As directed by Council, we will also be applying to the Skills Development Fund Round 4 for multi-year funding to support Set 7. Next, I'll talk a bit about the Economic Development Division. In September, the North Perth Economic Development Advisory Committee received a staff research report on destination animation following conversation at the Committee on Tourism in North Perth. It was proposed that staff include staff time in the business plan as well as some funds in the operating budget to do further research into the potential for destination animation or another suitable tourism project in North Perth. So in regards to that, we have allocated $20,000 using existing funds in the economic development budget to do this work. Also, for the Economic Development Advisory Committee, we received a presentation in November from some members of the Huron-Perth Egg Science Centre Board. This presentation included a request for financial support for 2024. The North Perth Economic Development Advisory Committee passed a motion advising Council to include a grant of $50,000 in the 2024 budget. This funding is proposed to partially fund the hiring of a staff person for the Huron-Perth Egg Science Centre. So that person would be employed by the Huron-Perth Egg Science Centre Board and not the municipality, just to clarify. Next, a bit about youth and workforce attraction retention, which are key priorities of economic development. The Workforce Attraction Employment Branding Project is carryover from 2023 and reflected in the 2024 proposed budget. The municipality was awarded RED program funding, again for this project, at 70%. Staff are currently working with a branding consultant to develop a municipality-wide employment brand of resources. And that also will include photography and video storytelling. Coming up at the end of this year and into 2024, there will be training clinics and mentorship opportunities for employees based on the resources that are developed through this project, as well as outreach to youth and schools. The next thing I would like to touch on is in terms of physician and healthcare recruitment. Council will note that at the Budgeting Visioning Session, it was requested that the 2024 budget include additional support for healthcare recruitment. The municipality did increase the annual donation to the Physician Recruitment Committee in the 2023 budget up to $20,000 per year. Through conversations with the Listowel Wingham Hospital Alliance CEO, it was proposed that Council establish a healthcare recruitment reserve fund. So in addition to the annual donation of $20,000, the economic development budget in 2024 has included an allocation of $25,000 towards the establishment of a healthcare reserve fund. It is something Council could consider either increasing or decreasing or not including. This would give the municipality, the recruitment committee, the hospital, and the family health team some flexibility in how best to strategically invest the funds in any given year, given the needs that would arise. Some examples could be there is a new residency program coming to North Perth in 2024. Funds could be available to support getting a new resident set up in North Perth in terms of housing or moving costs. Funds could also be used for something to do with a nurse practitioner, were some ideas that were put forward in the conversations with the hospital CEO. Lastly, in terms of communications, so the migration update of the municipal website was a project in the 2023 budget. Staff are still actively working on that project. It is taking significant time as we had anticipated. We're hoping that the new website will go live in early December, but we also anticipate that we'll continue to make updates and adjustments throughout 2024 based on user feedback. At the budgeting visioning session, there was also a request from council for staff to undertake a review of the North Perth Communications Plan. So we plan to move forward with that in 2024, as well as reviewing some of the communication-related policies that the municipality has. For example, our social media policy, our website policy. This work won't require any financial resources. It will just require staff time to complete in-house. In terms of the departmental work plan that is set out in the business plan and staff capacity, we do feel that the work plan includes a manageable load of core services and project and initiatives for 2024 based on our current staff capacity level. We feel that any additional initiatives that are added possibly throughout the year might strain staff capacity. Just to note that the Economic Development Coordinator position is currently vacant, but we hope to have it filled by the end of this year, and are also looking to fill the Agricultural Specialist position that is for the Ag Excellence Project by the new year as well. For these two positions, there will be staff time required for onboarding and training and getting everyone up to speed. In terms of our operating budgets, as I had noted at the beginning of my review, the majority of the cost increase are to do with the initiatives that the department will be taking on this year. For example, the increase in costs for the PC Connect share of services, the Ag Excellence Project, the initiatives for the Housing Action Plan, the grant request to the Huron Perth Ag Science Center, the establishment of the proposed healthcare reserve fund, Set 7, as well as the employment branding project. So I can answer any questions council may have on the business plan and the budget.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Council, at this point, does anyone have any questions? Oh, go ahead, Vice Chair Nordum.
Thanks to the chair. Thanks for the report. I'm just curious on the $50,000 grant to the Huron Perth Ag Science Center. Is that will that be also for 2025, like 2026, or is it 1 year? And also, are there other municipalities contributing to that grant?
Thank you for your question. In terms of commitment for upcoming years, that wasn't officially requested by the board, but I think it would be safe to assume that there might be that request coming forward if they continue to need the support of this staff person as they get into more activities such as their capital fundraising campaign. I don't think they have reached out to other municipalities, but I couldn't 100% say that. The CAO was also at that meeting, so I don't know if he would recall if they touched on that.
So I guess what I can say is the board itself is really in the early stages of trying to gather the funds for this position. So they have talked to both Huron and Perth County municipalities in the past, and I'm sure part of their fundraising campaign to come up with the rest of the funds will include talking to other municipalities. And certainly the money in the budget is still something that will be decided by this council before it's released to them. The Ag Science Center will likely make a presentation to council once the business plan was completed, if I recall correctly. Because there's also the other issue of the land donation that's outstanding regarding our commitment to the Ag Science Center. I guess one thing I could say is that the Ag Science Center has had enough conversations. They're receiving money from other places outside of North Perth, and certainly get the feeling there'd be other places that'd be certainly lobbying them to host the Ag Science Center in another location other than North Perth. So I think it's always been sort of our objective that if the Ag Science Center is established, we'd like it to be in our community.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Andreessen.
Through you, the chair, if I could add to that a little bit. There's an organization in Wellington County, the Grand River Agricultural Society, recently donated $25,000 towards the project, which is in our neighboring county, and the agricultural center Science Centre is seeking support from lots of different sources, including commodity groups as well. And like CEO Snell's comments, it's very likely that without municipal support, they could move on to another municipality. And I think that would be a very unfortunate occurrence if we are to lose this project here in North Perth for sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Andreessen. Any other? Yeah, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Cullum.
Yes, through Chair Instead, and thank you for your presentation. Just to speak on behalf of the $25,000 being allocated to the reserve fund for the recruitment, I am in fully support of that. As we know, Ontario is having trouble with our health care, but in North Perth, we're experiencing a huge crisis right now, and this is a drop in the bucket for us to step up and support it. So I hope that Council agrees on that $25,000 to the reserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there other questions at this time for Ms. McLean? I actually have one, Ms. McLean. Just going back to PC Connect, I know the $160,000, we approved that at our September 18th council meeting. And just so I'm clear, that's as the current state of PC Connect. That's not any expansion, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's
Okay.
as they're currently operating.
And then if there was going to be further expansion of the project, we'd have to have another discussion, obviously.
That's true, yes.
Okay. Are there any questions, any other questions at this time for Ms. McLean? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Council.
All right, next we'll invite our manager of programs, Ms. Gangle, up.
Thank you, Budget Chair, members of Council. The program budget includes operations for program administration, children's services, community and recreation programs and events, aquatic programs, and community social services and navigation. The success of our programs in 2023 and the goals established for 2024 are the result of our staff's hard work and dedication to the North Perth community and supports the program department's charter of fostering a sense of community through quality programs. The impacts of the budget presented to you are related to expenditures for staff capacity, marketing, program software, as there's materials and supplies to make these programs and services possible. To help manage our budget, revenues obtained through registration fees, user fees, donations, sponsorships, and government childcare subsidies. The following are highlights per the business plan. Staff recruitment and retention for the program department was a focus in 2023 and will continue to build on the successful positive work culture we've created. As a result of the changes we've made, our staff feel supported, valued, appreciated, and they can see a future with North Perth. This year, we also offered several co-op opportunities in our aquatics program, camp programs, childcare, as well as programs and facility administration. We continue to build our volunteer capacity to help make our programs and events a success. We recently posted an RFP for the procurement of the new recreation childcare program software with the goals of improving efficiencies. This is identified as a one-time item in the program admin budget from 2024. The program administrative assistant position was already reflected in the 2023 budget and is in the queue with human resources to be filled for 2024. With the addition of the position as well as the new program software, the leadership team can focus on more strategic program initiatives rather than administrative responsibilities. This year, we were successful in receiving over $260,000 in grants, donations, and other funding, which assisted us with providing programs for seniors, purchase new technology for children and early on programs, increase accessibility for childcare centers, as well as support the hiring of summer students. Some of the budgetary impacts related to service delivery include additional staffing for the community and recreation programs team. With the addition of new programs occurring weekdays, evenings, and weekends, and at several locations, with our current staff capacity, it will soon become a challenge to maintain quality programs while building new ones in North Perth. Investing in additional staff will help us to continue to build quality programs. Results from the one-year pilot of the community developer and support worker position has reinforced the need for the community and social services resources for North Perth. This position not only provided support within our organization, but also out in the community. Data obtained shows the areas for focus for the services provided are mainly related to housing stability, food security, income security, and seeking health services. With the ongoing support and mentorship from the City of Stratford Social Services, they meet with community members, provide short-term support as required, and facilitates community-focused education outreach to improve awareness of social issues and support systems that exist in the community. Because of its success, this program will continue in 2024 and beyond. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Planning Council recently presented a year-end review to the North Perth Council. The committee established measurable indicators for the first 3 priorities and expected to complete the 4th one by the new year. Data will be collected on those measurable indicators and will continue to build awareness campaigns around community needs. Each meeting, presentations are made from community organizations in order to better understand what services and needs exist and how the Community Safety Wellbeing Planning Council can help. 2023 saw the return of special guests into our children's programs. By doing this, we had increased engagement, which supported our goal of giving children a sense of belonging in their community. In addition to operating our licensed childcare centers, we continue to support the local nursery school with meeting the ministry requirements. We also continue to have ongoing discussions with partners to brainstorm and seek opportunities to build additional childcare spaces in North Perth where possible. At the end of 2022, you recall we enrolled in the Canada-wide Early Learning Childcare System, CWELC, which is a 5-year plan that's being implemented in stages to make childcare more accessible and affordable. This year, per 2023 CWELC guidelines, our base fees were reduced by 52.75% to our families, and those costs are offset through CWELC funding. There's been no word yet regarding fees changes for 2024. However, we anticipate hearing something before the end of next year in order to meet the goal of reaching the average provincial fee of $10 a day by 2025-2026. The final quarter's data has yet to be finalized for community and recreation programs, but so far we have 16,984 participants in 2023 compared to 17,505 participants in 2022 for children, youth, adults, and seniors. This also includes offering youth engagement opportunities and non-sport related programming. With our agreements with the school board, we've returned to our pre-pandemic schedule and added many additional programs. It is important to note that some school spaces have not yet been available to us as these areas are being used as classrooms until portables can arrive. Once they become available, we'll build more programs around those spaces. In addition, North Perth Early On programs and services had 6,143 participants for programs and events in 2023 compared to 5,300 in 2022. We submitted a proposal to the City of Stratford to continue to be the early on provider for North Perth area for 2024 to 2026 term. In 2024, we'll begin implementing the action plans laid out in that. Per Council's direction through the budget visionary sessions, proposed program rates and fees for 2024 have been increased to achieve more cost recovery. As a result, the revenue inflationary impacts are outlined in the budget. In collaboration with facilities, we've also begun implementing the goals outlined in the business plan for the Galbraith Conservation Area. Currently, we have a forest school renting the space to offer an outdoor education program. Location of those children participating so far are from Listowel, Milverton, Kitchener, and Wingham. In addition, we've partnered with Maitland Valley Conservation Authority and Niagara College to have students review and design a passive recreational trail network within the property for public use. We also have a donor interested in financially supporting initiatives on this property. In 2024, we'll make further presentations to others in the goals of obtaining additional funds to continue our work. Collaboration and partnerships plays a key part in the success of our programs department. For example, we partnered with the fire department to offer a firefighter camp as well as a rookie firefighter day, and with the OPP to offer a police academy camp and a bike rodeo event. The facilities and programs staff work together to offer quality programs and services at our recreation facilities. We also partner with Set 7 to support the home daycare training course. We communicate with the Kin Cares Youth Group, who host events and programs to fundraise to bring disc golf to North Perth. They also keep us informed of any ideas of programs that they'd like to see. Recreation partnered with Early On to offer a play and swim program at our pools. We helped establish the Huron-Perth Charter of Rights for Children and Youth in our communities. We bring awareness of North Perth community character traits and initiatives. We work with the library and strategic initiatives staff to support the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And finally, we helped add resources to our library branches so the public can borrow such things as early on reading kits, pool season passes, junior B season passes, basketballs, pickleball, and tennis kits. As a programs team, we are community collaborators. We build connections with others and we find ways to optimize program development. We are fostering a sense of community through quality programs. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gangle. Are there any questions for Ms. Gangle at this point, Council? I actually have one, Ms. Gangle, just about the Galbraith Conservation Area. Thanks for your update on that. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the budget. I heard about the lease that we have signed. Can you just give us a little bit more detail on the funds that are allocated to that at this point?
So you'll see a breakdown of the budget that it's a zero balance. So whatever funds that we receive, we will be spending. So there's no additional cost to the municipality on this. The costs will include, they cover some of the utilities, it covers some of the maintenance repairs that are needed. If they're not needed, we'll put them towards program development. We're trying to find partnerships. The partnership with Niagara College, for example, we can get additional capacity at no cost to help us with laying out of trails.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Gangle.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll invite up Chief Pape, our Manager of Development and Protective Services.
Thanks, Chair Anstett. Good evening, Council. As you are aware, Development and Protective Services includes building, planning, bylaw enforcement, the Police Services Board, and the North Perth Fire Department operations. Tonight, I'm joined by Chief Building Official Sally McMullen, who will present the building, bylaw enforcement, and planning portions of the department's business plan, while I will present on the Police Services Board and Fire Department. I would ask the clerk to advance to slide 4, please. Many of the day-to-day operational activities performed by Development and Protective Services are legislatively required. The department's proposed organizational structure is found on page 61 of your flip book. Please note where increased staffing is proposed, the total FTE for the position is identified in red. I will now turn the presentation over to Sally.
Okay, thanks, Jenny, and good evening, Chair Anstett and members of Council. I'm going to run through building and then planning and then bylaw. And to start with building, I wanted to build a little bit on what we discussed 10 or so days ago when we looked at the building activity report. So if you'll recall from that, the process that a building permit or a building project goes through: application, review, permit, and then inspections. So this budget for building really reflects the people and the tools that are necessary to carry out each of those stages. And on the screen, you'll see we currently have an FTE total for the team of 4, and the proposal here is for 5.3. So an extra person in inspection that would essentially replace some of the work that we're having currently by contracted services. And 3 inspectors is generally in the neighborhood, as I'm learning from different departments around Southern Ontario, for the permit numbers that we have here in North Perth. And they also do the plans examination. And then the point 3 is for additional coordination support. So we currently have 1 FTE coordinator, and this is proposed to be an actual 1 FTE, but portioned out among different areas. And so the 0.3, or roughly a third, is for additional support for building. And in our journey, our objective certainly to become more self-sufficient and be providing timely review and inspection services, we really need to cross-train that coordination position, and we really want to be able to provide coverage for that coordination position. So it is very full on. It's front counter facing, it's every day, it's at the window, and also a number of coordination services behind the scenes to ensure that the inspectors are dispatched and have what they need. And this person also reviews all new applications coming in the door for completeness as far as each component of the application, and assists folks with cloud permit. So this budget is heavily focused on people. And then on that same vein, I have budgeted for the continuation of contracted services. I have really tried to discern what it would take to cover those services at like the maximum level. And then I've also tried to build in here opportunities for us to continue to strive month over month to reduce that month over month. So I've sort of planned for the max, but I'm aiming actually for a min. And you'll recall from that presentation on the 6th that what they're providing for us currently is they are the appointed CBO under legislation to issue permits for the Building Code Act. They are also providing inspection and plans examination for certain types of buildings that we don't currently have in-house qualifications for. And so you'll also see in this budget that we have increased training significantly. And that is because everybody of the 5.3 would, we want to make sure everyone has that opportunity for training, and that we really are building our capacity towards self-sufficiency. And we've made pretty impressive gains, I think, on that front in the last month and a half even. And over the next probably 3 to 4 months, we'll have another quite a good chunk of courses under our belts. So the budget on the tool side of things includes certainly cloud permit. It's one of our main tools, greatest efficiency tools to manage the permit numbers and ensure very good record keeping. And also it's an incredibly efficient way to address our reporting requirements for both MPAC and Stats Canada. And the building department is meant to be self-funding. So one of the other things that we talked about a week and a half ago was that a fees review is currently underway. And the timing of budget and fees review was very nicely meshed because nicely timed with me coming on board and trying to really see what do we need here to like get back to self-sufficiency. So we've done a pretty fulsome dig deep in job on what expenses we think we need to have in order to run the department properly, and looked at heavily at these numbers for expenses. And then the fees review is meant to address that cost recovery. The fees review fees are set by council, and it is a public process as well. So there's a public meeting component to that. And it has been some time, at least over a decade, as far as I can tell, that a fulsome fees review has been done here in North Perth for building permit costs. So just a bit of a summary on building is that the Building Code Act actually names council as the responsible party for ensuring that we have enforcement, and that's through the appointment of qualified individuals for both the CBO position and inspection positions. This budget, I believe that I'm presenting here, offers the people and the tools and the training that we need in 2024 to provide that responsible enforcement and continually work towards that all being done in-house. And the plan, I also think, is completely aligned with our strategic plan here in North Perth, which is to offer staff the tools and the knowledge to be successful and to feel valued in providing an efficient and cost-effective service. So that is sort of the building side of things. I'd like to talk quickly about planning. Planning is also largely self-funding, a self-funding municipal process as far as applications goes and the cost recovery there. North Perth receives a portion of the fees collected for all types of planning applications to cover the administrative portions that we do here, those activities and those tasks that are done by North Perth staff. And so another third of that coordination person that I mentioned in the building summary is a third also dedicated to planning. So that person will spend quite a bit of that third of an FTE on the pre-consultation process for applicants, potential applicants, and certainly the flow of zoning bylaw applications and site plan applications. And I have been doing a lot of the site plan work to try and streamline that process and get it into a really nice, smooth flowing package. And I can tell you it's quite a bit of work. So it's important that we have administrative people doing administrative tasks and folks like inspectors and myself doing things more related to plans examination and inspection services. On the bylaw side of things, bylaw is not currently self-funding, and it has been approved for some time as a 1.65 FTE. And we've been functioning throughout 2023 for the most part with one, and that's through a contracted service. So this budget proposes to bring that 1.65 back in-house and also to add the balance to bring us up to 2. So given that we've been experiencing sort of one bylaw officer through the year, this could feel like quite a boost in 2024 if we were actually functioning with 2. A bit of that coordinator's time that I mentioned would also be dedicated to this in terms of to assist with information tracking. So some of that time that the bylaw officer spends now is in tracking down pieces of information. And so some of that coordination support could help with that. And I think it would be valuable to the community if we were able to use some of that bylaw officer's time to engage in some proactive activities and help assist in establishing some updated bylaws and also some more sophisticated ticketing systems. So that's where I see the vision of this particular group going. So in an overall summary for these 3 portions of the protective services budget is that the coordination role is very much shared. I've covered a good portion of it, but we're also intending to share that coordinator with with fire, and do some secretarial work for Police Services Board. The nature of our work, and our being the whole of protective services, is quite well meshed. So not only are we logistically located in the same place, but logically our work does cross paths quite a bit. And so it makes quite good sense to me, at least, that we have a coordinator that we can share to cover some of these gaps, to provide that cross training and the coverage that and the research and information gathering that we all really need. And then I think my final comment would be that given that the fees review is underway, I feel like this budget, especially for building, is not especially elaborate, and it's not bare bones either. It's somewhere in the middle. And I think it's quite a reasonable look at what we actually need to provide the development community with an adequate system to work within, and also to meet our enforcement obligations to the building code and to the community in a fiscally responsible way. So I'm going to turn it back over to Janny to Chief Pape to cover the rest of the department's areas. Thanks.
Thanks, Sally. In 2024, the NPFD budget was prepared as a departmental budget. The consolidation of accounts is intended to better serve the department as a whole, and the adjustment has resulted in the merging of many accounts now identified in the fire administration budget. The transition to a departmental budget began in the fall of 2023, and already we are noticing some administrative efficiencies. 2023, in addition to providing fire protection services to our community, we entered into an agreement with GFL Environmental to provide hazardous materials response at no cost to our taxpayers. We completed a number of renovations to the Atwood Fire Station. We added a support vehicle to improve the health and safety of our volunteer firefighters. We increased public education messaging through the installation of an electronic sign at the Listowel Fire Station. We renewed lease agreement with Perth County Paramedic Services for their use of our Moncton Fire Station. We updated a tiered response agreement. We hired a full-time training officer, and we transitioned to an online burn permit system. It's been a busy year. In 2024, legislation requires that our community conducts a community risk assessment specific to fire protection services. It is intended to inform decisions about the provision of those services and how we meet the needs of our community based on our risks. In 2024, staff plans to investigate the opportunity to develop a regional training center in Moncton. This would involve the paving of an additional area at the Elma Logan Recreation Complex, as we discussed in the capital budget a little while ago. And the overall idea is to increase training levels for our own personnel. But I do see that there is a training need, not just with our own, but in areas around us. Interest has been expressed by neighboring departments, and there likely is an opportunity to turn an RTC into a revenue-generating project for us in the future. A volunteer firefighting force continues to be a very cost-effective way to provide fire protection services for our community. That said, we are augmenting with certified fire prevention training and operational day staff. The hiring of our training officer has allowed us to take some of the time commitment off of the volunteers by allowing that certified training officer to provide lesson plans and to prepare for lessons instead of our volunteers on their own time. That said, with the certification requirements increasing and volunteerism decreasing, recruiting and retaining volunteer firefighters is becoming a problem across this country. While we've been able to successfully recruit, we do want to consider a compensation review in this year's budget. I have also included some amount for an interim raise for our firefighters. We want them to know that they are appreciated, and a compensation study will take a look at their compensation package. As our roster continues to grow, our costs for training, course materials, uniforms, and workwear also increases. We have been successful with a few grants in 2023, and we will continue to pursue opportunities to augment department needs with grant opportunities. In 2024, a high-quality public education campaign that will showcase local athlete celebrities and our local amenities is being considered. The campaign would be in partnership with the Minto Fire Department and the Strategic Initiatives Department, allowing us to cost share on the project. There's potential for sponsorships to reduce the costs of this project. We continue to engage with our community's youth, welcoming 2 cooperative education students from LDSS this year. Second week of a junior firefighter camp, story time with the NPFD, with our library, and engagement with the specialist high school major program at LDSS. Another opportunity that we're excited about for 2024, it's proposed in our budget, is Camp Molly. Camp Molly is an opportunity to introduce females between the age of 15 and 18 to a career in the fire service. This program, I had the opportunity to take part in it in Zora. It was quite empowering to watch these girls and see what they were capable of doing. And Camp Molly's been around for a few years now, and they're actually starting to see graduates and from full-time fire programs. So that's encouraging to see. I do have the support of the Perth County Fire Chiefs and the Minto Fire Chief. If we were to be successful in this year's budget to bring that forward, we would look at that likely in late fall of next year. The operating budget has included an amount of $10,000, but I do see there would be sponsorship opportunities to reduce that. Moving on to police services. The estimated policing cost per property in 2024 is $421.86. That's an increase of approximately $5.60 from last year. The total estimating policing cost would be $2,788,101. The main costs that could be attributed to the estimated policing costs per property is the municipal base service as well as calls for service. Additionally, overtime, contract enhancement, and a 2.01 salary increase, which represents a 1% increase in both the years 2023 and 2024. Court security and prisoner transportation is also included in that amount. The implementation of a new comprehensive Ontario Police Services Act is anticipated in late spring. Development and protective services operations are heavily focused on the strategic priorities set out in the 2023 to 2026 corporate strategic plan. Those are laid out on slide 8 and 9. As previously mentioned, many of our core services and department projects are legislatively required. They have been identified on pages 9 through 11. Staff capacity comments. Within development and protective services, building, planning services, and bylaw enforcement experience high levels of in-person service with the public. We have some capacity challenges. As our building department staff is increasing their qualification to transition away from contracted services, they also need to be able to focus on studies to do that. And our administrative support staffing levels are just proving to be insufficient for the workload that we're seeing. With respect to fire department staffing, firefighter retention and recruitment, as I said, there continues to be a challenge across Canada. We have been fortunate that we continue to be able to recruit firefighters, but the workload associated with recruiting and onboarding new firefighters is significant. We've had 2 big years of recruit. We do not anticipate recruiting next year. Increased training requirements and emergency call volumes continue to tax our volunteer firefighters. In addition to the full-time training officer in late 2023, which has helped on the front of volunteers not having to dedicate as much time to planning for training, they are still taxed, and our call volume continues to increase, as you probably hear if you live here in town. That said, our daytime response capabilities have been augmented with the addition of the training officer, and this year yet we are still hoping to bring on our fire prevention officer, who is a lieutenant in a neighboring department, and she will begin riding trucks as well. So that does help with our daytime response. I'm going to turn it back over to Sally for a high-level review of her portion of the operating budget.
Okay, thank you. So you can see in the chart on the flip book that building is at net zero, as it's meant to be self-funding. Planning administration is partially self-funding. We're also looking at consolidating 3 of those previous accounts, 9,111, 12, and 13. Those will be consolidated into the planning administration budget going forward. So that's why they're showing as either balanced or negatives. And then over to, just bear with me for a second. Bylaw, same, I have consolidated a couple of things here as well. So bylaw administration in the budget, they're at 220. So it's not self-funding. There is some ticketing, but it doesn't cover the full cost of that service.
And going back to the fire department budget, you will see some changes there. As I mentioned before, we have consolidated some accounts. So in some places you will see that there's just a number there and then it's X'd out. That's why we've moved it over to the fire administration budget. The increase in the fire administration budget, as mentioned before, doesn't include a compensation study for our volunteer firefighters, as well as an interim increase until we know what the results of that compensation study reveal. Fire protection agreement, the increase there is based on the COLA, cost of living adjustment, that we negotiate with our partners. The $60,000 reduction in fire equipment, that's because we moved that over to capital. So that is one of the yearly allocations that we had made. We moved that over to capital. Fire fleet, it's costing more to maintain our fleet. We do have a reserve pumper right now that it's being used as our frontline pumper in Listowel because Unit 12 is out for repairs, so it's important that we do have that. There are still supply chain challenges for us to get our apparatus fixed. Right now, Unit 12 is sitting in Paris, and it's been out of service for 3.5 weeks. So that reserve pumper is helpful, but that does mean there's extra cost to maintaining a reserve. Also on the, going back up to fire administration, the $15,000 one-time, that has to do with our public service announcement that we're hoping to put out. That's a high quality item. And Camp Molly is included in that as well. Happy to answer any questions that council may have at this time.
Thank you, Chief Pape and Ms. McMullen. Are there any questions for either of these two ladies at this point? Okay. I did have one. Sorry, ladies. Sorry. Had to make sure nobody else. Just want to go to the And Chief Pape, I'm not sure if maybe this is, maybe Ms. Fraser can help us. It was just around the compensation review, the proposed compensation review, I should say. I'm just wondering what's been done to date. Where are we at with that? I know it's proposed, but.
At this point, it is proposed.
Okay.
There has been some ad hoc work done in the past. The difficulty with firefighter compensation is no two jurisdictions pay the same. Jurisdiction not far from here pays based on points. There's a pot, and it depends on how many calls you have and how many. That doesn't go over well with many folks. We have other places that have minimum call-outs. When we look at our call-outs, most of the calls are lasting an hour or less in duration, so it doesn't make sense to have a higher call-out. So it's a bit of a tricky calculation, and we want to get it right. And so that's why we're looking for a third party to help us with that.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you through the chair. Chief Pape, if you don't mind, can you just clarify where you want to go with your staffing? Because you're increasing the administrative staff due to extensive workload. Can you just clarify that for me, if you don't mind?
Sure. So in last year's budget, we had discussed a complement of 70 volunteer firefighters, and we're still working towards that. So what that looks like in our Listowel station is 30, and in our Atwood station, 20 and 20 in our Moncton station. It's difficult to recruit in Atwood and Moncton because there isn't a lot of daytime employment there, and it's smaller numbers you're pulling from. So it's more difficult and challenging, but that's what we're working towards on the volunteer side. When it comes to our day staff, because it's the daytime response, which is usually the challenge for volunteer fire departments, because people are working during the day. And so that's where we're most challenged to get our people out to respond to the calls. And so with the hiring of a training officer who's fully certified, he was a firefighter before he came to us. So he comes fully qualified to fight fires. Amanda Walker, who's our fire prevention officer and public educator, she's a lieutenant in a neighboring department, so she is fully certified and qualified, ready to ride those trucks. So we have to do a bit of a gaps analysis to make sure they're ready to go. But that's my vision, if council so chooses, is to continue to increase day staff, because there are things that those folks can do during the day. In full-time professional departments, many times the firefighters are there on a 24-hour shift. If they don't get a call, they might train. Other than that, they don't have things to do. I don't want to do that. We don't have the luxury of doing that right now. So augmenting with day staff that are qualified in other areas, such as public education, such as fire prevention, which can reduce fires to begin with, is a more cost-effective approach. In the interim, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. Our community continues to grow, and that brings challenges from a firefighting perspective. Some of the increased training we're looking at this year is for high-rise construction. That is a very different type of firefighting. It requires a different level of training. And so we have to consider those needs as our community continues to grow. The challenges related to a battery storage plant or electric vehicle fires, those are very real. And so we're looking to send our day staff out to learn more about that and to bring that training back into our staff. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this point? Okay, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll call up Mr. Newell, our Manager of Facilities.
Good evening, Chair Anstead and members of council. I have the pleasure of presenting the business plan and budget for the Facilities Department. The Facilities Department is responsible for a variety of services, including cemeteries, the management of parks and recreation facilities and spaces, including beautification. The department also maintains 27 kilometers of trails and plans for the development of future trail networks. Providing facility maintenance through a host of caretakers and facility operators and the overseeing of capital and operating projects interdepartmentally. These departments that we provide services to include, but are not limited to, the Public Works, Fire, Libraries, Childcare, Perth Meadows, and Administrative Spaces. Recently, the department has undergone an organizational structure review, and changes have been implemented to reflect staff competencies in various areas. With succession planning and future realignment of positions, there will be a requirement to meet the increasing demands on the department initiatives. A review of 2023 shows that the department completed an ambitious list of planned capital projects. These are listed on page 80 and 81 of the flipbook. Some of the projects of note include the Moncton Ball Lights, Atwood Pool Filtration System, the New Park Development Project for Nickel Ward, Hanneshaven, and Wallace Optimus Park, upgrades to the Atwood Fire Station and the parking and the bay refurbishment, new office work locations or stations for the Development and Protective Services Department. The Listowel Carnegie Library structural repairs is still underway. We replaced the roof on the municipal office, redid the Perth Meadows driveways, and we're just completing the North Perth facility condition assessment review. We've also had the acquisition of the 104 Wallace Scotiabank property is projects that we were involved with this year. Our strategic priorities include the efficient and sustainable and cost-effective proactive facility maintenance. We strive to have an engaged staff that are well-trained and capable. We're involved with the diverse transportation options, as an example, the trail network. We have inclusivity in services and locations where we offer programs. We offer robust recreational facilities and programming for residents of all ages. In 2024, the work plan will see approximately 18 full-time equivalent staff positions to address a host of core services along with departmental projects. Many of the projects that we do are capital in nature, but we do have departmental projects that are not seen as capital. But projects that we will be working on are the aquatic facility drawings, which are going to RAC tomorrow night, the MAP 59 park project, playground installations at Memorial Park, Atwood Lions Park, and Wallace Optimus Park, the El Memorial Community Center architectural rejuvenation plan that the Atwood Lions commented that they would help support the development of that facility, and the roof replacement on the PUC. From a staff capacity standpoint, as the investment in municipal facility infrastructure will be a focus in years to come, the facility review will identify future projects which could see an increase in staff required to address the growing number of projects that the department does. We found that we are likely at capacity now for our full-time equivalents. That means that we have not hired to the point of busiest time of year, which are our shoulder seasons, which are always a challenge when we have staff moving into facilities like arenas, but there's grass and leaves and everything else still to look after. So we could potentially bring on more, but that would mean that we would have excess staff at other times during the year. As these projects, as we see these projects developing, we may be needing to look at realignment of staff positions with people moving on, retiring, and increased projects. From a budget standpoint, this will be the first year since 2021 where we haven't seen the effects of COVID as part of our planning. This is the first year that we have actuals that reflect full capacity in our facilities. So our revenues are far easier for us to predict this year based on last year's numbers. So that is encouraging. This is also, in the past, the facilities and programs department were one, and so there's been a separation plus of those departments plus COVID, so it really has been a lot of guesswork in the previous years, which is not the case now. Some of the things with regards to our budget, most of our work is focused on projects, capital in nature, but we do have some expenses that are increasing in our facility maintenance admin. So as an example, if we are looking at upgrading furnishings here in the council chambers, That's not a capital initiative because we feel it will come under a certain threshold. But new chairs, as an example, would be something that would be something that we would build into that. And I see council smiling about that. So we've also added 104 Wallace, so there will be a number of expenses that are just guesstimates at this point as far as operations. We don't have an idea of the number of staff that are going to be in there, what the cleaning needs will be, those type of things. So there was a budget put in of $35,000 to address things like cleaning supplies, heat, hydro, IT requirements. So we do have money set aside for that. From a facilities operation standpoint, the lovely cenotaph, which is lit up tonight, is going to need some repairs on the lower level. A lot of the doors are starting to come apart, so we will be spending some money on the cenotaph this year. Park operations administration, the biggest increase we've seen here is the reallocation of staffing costs. So we've changed how we broke down the operator's wage, and that we've split it between parks and recreation for the most part, as well as some non-recreation facilities. So the parks budget went up, but it's a realignment of how we pay or how we assign the different portions to our budget. It is also with the increase of cost of living and the fact that many of our employees are at the entry-level position or on the senior end of the position, we're all budgeting at a point where we're budgeting at the highest level. So the actual costs will be lower than that, given the fact that we have some more junior employees. And then for park maintenance, there's some one-time costs for some video cameras that we want to put in some of our parks, as well as some concrete work at a pavilion in Wallace. And finally, cemeteries, it's where the changes are just representing or reflecting the 2023 actuals, as well as the cost of living wage increase. But for the most part, it's the capital budget, which is the one that has the most influence on what our department does. But operationally, we're very confident that it's a reasonable budget that we're putting forth. Be happy to answer any questions that people may have.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Are there any questions for Mr. Newell at this point? I did have one, Jeff, just regarding the Wallace purchase. I know you've said that a lot of that stuff's unknown. Do you have any idea when we're going to have a little bit more clarity on that building and the expenses?
Yeah, so we did take over the building on Friday of last week. We are in the process of changing over keys and things like that, and having staff come up with a schedule of inspection on a daily basis to make sure everything is in order until we start moving people in. My guess is we won't have anyone in there till the new year. We have some initial staff meetings to talk about what is the purpose there, what are the who are the staff that would be moving there, what are some of the other issues we talk about, whether it be security, any minor repairs that need to be done. So yeah, we have an initial meeting actually tomorrow with CAO, Snell, and HR and IT tomorrow to start doing some planning for that, but it would likely be in the new year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at this point? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next we'll call on Mr. Coach, our manager of operations.
Thank you. Just in general, talking about the operations department business plan and budgeting, this is very much a status quo representation of the budget for this year. No changes in level of services are being recommended whatsoever. There are increases for the COLA, for salaries, etc. in here, although there's some negative numbers in the line items that we'll talk about later on. It's related more to allocations and the nesting of budgets and more accurate budgeting. It's not related to reductions in service whatsoever. So I just wanted to start by assuring you of that. If we look at the overview of the department, section 1, just in our business plan, I'm going to go very infrastructure and the road allowance, and generally operationally, including everything from ditching to sewer systems and road surface. We continue to work with development review and management and inspection processes, as well as GIS services, and that role is expanding as we go. We can just take a quick look at the organizational structure there on the right side. The one larger change in terms of the department is that the finance and development coordinator, which is currently a position that is vacant. Interviews are expected as early as next week. An important position that we actually work with at the Public Works Department significantly, and it'll be reporting directly to the manager. Given that the salaries are included in the budget this year as part of our salary package, but that's new, not new to the organization whatsoever or its function, but new as to where it's reporting. We list our legislated standards and all the rules that we live by at Public Works next. If we look at the 23 program, things were, generally successful in terms of our road maintenance, road restoration, road rebuilding programs, and then our general operations, everything from gravel to street sweeping. We did a little bit more catch basin and structure repair this year as we're getting some time to look at the stormwater system. Winter operations coming off the winter storm, I just wanted to point out again, and it's been talked about, significant weather events are something that we can declare. We've heard about that through our county partners, and we'll very much partner with them on those. We know if we do have events like that in the future, how to handle them, but also we're learning how to communicate better as we move through them in terms of what our capabilities are. I talked about stormwater, and GIS and master planning is the other aspect of what we're doing. We're looking at the stormwater system. Mark's coming up next. He's going to talk about sanitary and water. We're really trying to make sure that we know exactly what the pipe capabilities and capacities of the overall systems in Atwood and Listowel are, and where the weak spots are in terms of servicing for future growth. That's something that's coming up next year. Traffic, always a big one. The master plan is going to come on December 11th in a draft format. The anticipated timeline for that is a 60-day review for council. It'll be a period when you can review the overall document, which is large, all the policies that are involved, and then it'll be finalized after that 60-day window of review. During that period, the public will be able to have input through the portal as they had previously during COVID, with written comments coming in, and those will continue to be accumulated and brought into the plan. So those are those two big plans that are coming up for the department. If we look to 2024, again, status quo, we're going to continue the existing work. Vegetation control and vegetation management. Phragmites is an invasive problem that we have in the municipality. We looked at that program this year. We were not able to coordinate with a contractor, but we'll look at a spray program for that next year, and that would be additional. Other than that, again, like I say, I keep saying it's status quo, continued operations. Moving forward in the reporting, just regarding staff capacity and comments, the budget had already accommodated a half-time person to come in its budget last year. That remained vacant through this year, so there was that buffer of salary that was already in there and built into the system. The new accounting system has also helped us, FMW we call it, to be more accurate with our budgeting. So you've seen a honing down of numbers. They look like negative numbers, but as I said, not a reduction in service, but just more accurate budgeting given the software that we're using. And that really brings about just a general comment in terms of reviewing staff capacities in the future. Something we'll do this year as we look to take over some more subdivisions and do additional work. Really, there's only 8 full-time workers. If we look at our aggressive budget in terms of road rebuilding and widening and road rebuilding and gravel sections, sometimes people are absent due to vacation, just at that critical summer window when we need multiple graders and multiple people out. So we are actually, it's not just vacation. We're looking at contracting some of that work or getting help in other ways, but although it's in the budget, we may not be able to perform the goal of 2 kilometers of road rebuild in the summer. We're going to take a look at it this summer, then report back through the budget next year. That's really something that we'll have to look at for future. If we get to the actual line items on the blue pages, again, there's several things happening here, and I'll use some examples. You can see that they're under 3263 gravel road resurfacing. There's a significant increase. It just represents the nesting of accounts. Okay, we're taking our gravel road accounts and we're all nesting them into one. Looks like a huge increase there and decreases in others. It balances out to the same program plus slight increases. So that's nesting that's happening in these budgets. There's internal allocations, including fleet internal allocations, that take numbers down to negatives, I'll say. Looks like a decrease in budget, but it's just the allocation has changed somewhat. But again, same operational process. The other thing that I would mention is that there's some depreciation costs that have changed as well that affect the bottom line. But overall, probably a 3.5 to 4.1% change in the general accounts in terms of increases for public works operations. And that's what the bottom line is when we look at the 6.2 million going up to 6.5 million on the back page. So I can talk about anything and give more detail that you'd like and answer questions now.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. Go ahead, Mayor Kasenberg.
So, Mr. Couch, I hope this microphone's on. Yep. It's been one of my pet projects for a while to address the proliferation of weeds and sidewalk cracks in public property, which diminish the aesthetic of our community. And I'm wondering if there's anything in here that's going to increase that service level.
The answer to that is yes. The vegetation management program is something that we could utilize in terms of spraying. We know that spraying in the urban environment is something we don't want to do. So we did literally physically weed cut some of those areas. The cracks are not getting smaller, and the area for dirt to accumulate and weeds to grow is not getting smaller. So our sidewalk replacement program will help with some of that. But yes, it's under vegetation management that we would do that. And honestly, we're going to react to those situations. We're not going to be proactive other than we're replacing large sections of sidewalk and panels as we go. Hopefully it reduces the amount of cracks and problems.
I trust, if I might, Mr. Chair, you've heard me rant a little bit about creating a weed crew and hiring some summer students to take this on. I still think that this is something that should be an objective because certainly there are a number of places that clearly are infrastructure that seem to be overgrown in some cases. We certainly also see increasing graffiti on some of the public infrastructure, and those are things that I think we need to show our due care and attention to, so I'm encouraging you to consider that.
Certainly. Yep, we've been coordinating with facilities in terms of removal of graffiti. We've got better costing from contractors on that. To be honest, and we need your input, and we need the public's input, and we do wait for that. We aren't inspecting really weed growth on cracked sidewalks, in general, but if there are streets, there are back streets in some of the smaller villages that are in poor condition, we know that. Until there's a full rebuild on a street, and hopefully you'll see that in a 5 to 10 year window forecast of road rebuilds, that's going to be an ongoing problem. If the weeds and the cracks become a hazard for pedestrian traffic and don't meet the standard of a 20 mil offset that's going to trip you, we probably won't deal with it. But we will, based on a call-by-call basis, especially if things go by our inspection. We inspect sidewalks once a year, annually, under the regulation, looking for hazards, but not so much aesthetics. But I understand what you're saying, and we'll keep coordinating that with you in terms of what the public expects and what they're asking for.
I hate to make it seem trivial, but I foresee a couple of students with a couple of weed whackers walking the streets of North Perth over the course of the summer months to take care of this stuff. I can say honestly that I've done some of that work as a volunteer, and I think that perhaps we may want to try to mobilize a little better in terms of cleaning up our streetscape.
Okay, the students are in the budget, so okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Couch at this time? Yeah, go ahead, Vice Chair Nordum.
Thanks to the chair. Thanks for the report, Lyndon. I'm just curious, snow removal for the Galbraith Conservation property, is that a part of the operations budget? Or I assume it is.
Yeah, facilities is actually looking at that separately using contractor. Actually, I can't really speak to it, but I know they did approach us in terms of our abilities and it was a facilities item outside of the road network and our municipal roads. We aren't responsible for it.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious, will that number be tracked this winter?
Jeff can assist me on this, but I believe as of right now, we're not doing any snow removal at Galbraith until we get some further investigation into some of the issues we're dealing with.
Yeah, the challenge with snow removal is the cost of insurance for contractors to maintain. So there's very few players in the world that can address the needs that we've got. As such, the price is prohibitive. We would take as Amy had alluded to, there's a donor that wants to support the projects, and we're trying to be full cost recovery, and anything that we save we'll put back into it. But snow removal alone, if we have a busy winter, that would eliminate all of our revenue that we have. We're just working with our insurer today to see if there's a creative way we can get third-party liability insurance for someone with a blower that would be interested in helping out to do that. In the meantime, the flexibility of the school that's making use of the space, they're okay to not be there in the winter, but their preference would be to be there. We just have to find an affordable way to do it.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Newell. Are there any other questions at this point? I did have one, Lyndon. Just the winter standby line item. I noted that it was the same amount in the 2023 operating budget. Just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that, please. Item 3278 in the.
Yeah, maintained at base budget of $36,000.
That's correct.
Okay. That's a no change budget item. The standby is something that we apply to contractors for standby plowing services for days when they are not plowing. And it's based on, it's about 16 to 18 week period where they are on standby and they do receive pay. It assures us that they're available to come in and do work. On the days when they do come in and do work, they get paid at the hourly rate under a contract that we have with them. And that's that budget item.
Okay, and then just my secondary question, being that it is the same amount, is that sufficient, or do we need to reevaluate that? Is that the rates are the same, they're set?
Yeah, standardized over a long-term contract. I think we extended the one contract. The other was in place already.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other question? Yeah, Vice Chair Nordum, go ahead.
Yeah, building on that, I think it should be raised, maybe not this year, but we have to look at it in upcoming years as well. So, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you, Mr. Couch. Yeah, come on up, Mr. Hackett, our Manager of Environmental Services.
Thank you, Chair and Council. The Environmental Services Department provides water, wastewater, solid waste, emergency management, and climate change initiative services. We have a lot of legislative standards that we're required to meet. They dictate what we do and how we do it. I won't go through them. There's a long list of them. Looking at the 2023 review and 2024 outlook, starting with water and wastewater, we've continued to see strong residential growth in 2023, and it's expected to continue in 2024 with the provincial regulations for water and wastewater systems that we're required to be self-funding. So we're not on the tax levy, but are on a user pay system. Rates and fees are reviewed on an annual basis, and that's coming up in the next couple weeks before council. We're doing a financial plan and rate study. It's scheduled to be completed in 2024. It's a requirement of our municipal drinking water license, and that'll look at our water and wastewater systems over the next 10 years. Looking at the water department itself, to start with, council is aware we have water systems in Atwood, Listowel, Molesworth, and Gowanstown. And I've listed some of the things besides the regular operations and maintenance that took place last year. I won't go through them, And I've also listed some plans for next 2024. I'd note that we did have our Ministry of Environment, Conservation of Parks annual well inspections. For Atwood, Molesworth, and Gowanstown, there were no non-compliances. The Listowel inspection at the time of this printing was not done, but it has been completed now, but we haven't got the report back from the inspector. The wastewater systems, we have the wastewater treatment plant we look after in Listowel, 6 pump stations through Listowel and 2 pump stations located in Atwood, as well as all the associated collection system in both Listowel and Atwood. Again, I've listed some of the things that took place in 2023. Most of what I've listed for 2024 are related to capital projects because they do take some operational time from our staff as well to be involved in. Our solid waste division saw operational expenses generally as budgeted. Our revenues were approximately $30,000, expected to be by the end of the year, higher than predicted. And those revenues come from things like our landfill tipping fees, our automated bin fees, and the sale of scrap metal and other projects. Council directed staff in 2021 to move to a user fee-based operational budget, and we've been able to do that the last couple of years, and I foresee we'll meet that for 2023 and again for 2024. Really of note, this coming year with the recycling changes that are coming, we've had since 2019 many changes, and this is one of the last things to change to producer responsibility, and that's the Blue Box program. Excuse me. So in April of 2024, we'll be moving that to that producer responsibility program, and there'll be some significant savings from that. And what we're planning with that this year is to just put it into reserves in the solid waste reserves. And then when you look at what the public will see for curbside pickup, you really will see no difference from what you're seeing every day right now. And that won't change probably until the end of 2025 when all the municipalities in Ontario have switched over. At that time, we'll kind of reevaluate because we're not even sure that Blue Water will be doing it anymore, but we're hoping that that's the case. Once we know more about that, and we'll be able to then look at expanding some of the services that we have, such as the green bin program. So we're waiting until we know more about Blue Water's participation moving forward after 2025. Just briefly, our mattress recycling program and our styrofoam recycling program, we've been doing that for a number of years. 2017, the mattresses have been being recycled, and we've done over 6,000 mattresses and box springs, the equivalent to 44 tractor trailer loads. For the styrofoam recycling program since 2020, we have about 5 tractor trailer loads. So that's just a visual on the amount of landfill space we've been able to save by operating those programs. Looking at climate change, we had some initiatives. We did a lot of planting this year. Approximately 3,345 trees and shrubs were planted this year through the spring and fall planting at the wastewater treatment plant. There was a TD Tree Day planting at the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex, and there were plantings on various municipal drains throughout the municipality as well. And that was in conjunction with the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. As we spoke about at a recent council meeting, we're scheduled to receive a level 3 electric charging station as part of the regional collaboration program called Rural Recharge. And so that we're not sure when that's coming exactly, but that's been awarded to the IV charging network, and we'll have more information for council when I have it. We also learned about the Perth County Electric Pathway that was looking at the level 2 chargers, where we're going to be installing 4 of them at the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex in the next little while. And we're also looking at the Alma Logan Recreation Complex and the Alma Memorial Community Center for level 2 charges as well. And finally, the Perth County Stewardship Program was developed for Perth County and the member municipalities to support residents' environmental projects, protecting soil, water, and air. And that'll be launched in 2024. So as we learned last week as well, there's been a new position filled. It's the Resiliency and Stewardship coordinator, and we had a presentation from Hannah Can. Looking at emergency management, that service is provided through the county and its 4 member municipalities on a shared service basis. So we have a community emergency management coordinator, or CEMC, that's supported by alternate CEMCs like myself from the 4 lower tier municipalities. So the focus in 2023 was training. We're also should be seeing the emergency response plans have been updated, and that should be coming to council, I think, in the next couple of weeks. In North Perth, we expanded our own emergency supplies of cots and blankets necessary to be able to respond to emergency situations as they develop. And also a Perth County Severe Weather Guide was also developed in 2023, and I think it's available now. I think they were delivered to, we have copies of them here at the municipal office now. Sorry, then the departmental work plan, most of that is just the regular day-to-day things that our operational staff do. Some of the extra things that are included under the wastewater and water and wastewater items there, and the solid waste are capital projects that will take a bit of staff time as well. And that leads me to finally talk about the staff capacity. So the water and wastewater division org chart that we currently have, we have a utility supervisor position that's been vacant. We tried a couple times last year to fill it, but we're not able to find a suitable applicant. But we do believe that with the market review compensation update from this year, we think that'll be a real asset moving forward, and we're going to try again in the new year to fill that very important position within the department. Looking at the solid waste division, they're operating with sufficient staff resources at this time. Emergency management, that staff, that's basically myself and then some other members that from the municipality that are involved in the emergency control group. So we have a lot of new staff members in there. So as I mentioned, a lot of our focus has been on staff training, and that'll be a priority as well in 2024. And prior to 2023, the municipality relied on a grant-funded contract climate change coordinator position to help develop a municipal greenhouse gas emission reduction plan that was presented to and approved by council. And as I mentioned, there is now a person that's been hired by the county that part of that role will be to look at climate change initiatives. However, I think it's important that the municipality makes a decision at some point in the future about whether or not that'll be enough. And because to move forward with this plan, it may take a full-time position of a climate change coordinator here in North Perth as well. And that'll be something we can discuss in the future. Looking at my individual budgets for the water operations, and again, it's a reminder, it's not on the tax levy, it's by user pay. It's a user pay system. And basically, if you were to look over onto the right-hand column at the bottom that's blank, the bottom column, that's because that zeroes out. And we do that by basically taking the revenue and expenses, any extra we put into reserves. So for 2024, we're putting $619,000 into reserves, and that allows us to sustain operations and projects in the future. Looking at the wastewater one again, on the user pay system, and at the end of the day, we're moving $875,000 to reserves in 2024. And the solid waste division, there's a couple points I wanted to make here. 4722 curbside pickup recycling. That's where we see those savings from the moving to the change to the Blue Box program. And then line 4721, the curbside pickup waste. I just wanted to note, when you see that growth there, that's simply as the community grows, we're getting more revenues from the wheelie bin program. So again, that budget zeros, and we're putting almost $100,000 into reserves there. Looking at the emergency management budget, it's slightly lower. What we decided to do there, we've been putting money for a number of years into reserves. So most of what you see is for wages and purchase of supplies. but we're also including $50,000 to emergency reserves, which is $25,000 less than last year. We did $75,000. So we should be sitting at over $620,000 in that reserve as well. And finally, the climate change, most of that that you see is a slight increase, mostly due to wages, and also we're setting some money aside for potential work to prepare the sites for the EV charger stations that may occur in 2024. So that is my budget, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hackett. Are there any questions for Mr. Hackett at this point? Okay. Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next we'll invite our library CEO, Ms. Whalen, up for her presentation.
Too many papers. Good evening, Council. Budget Chair Anstead. It's my pleasure to bring our library board budget to you tonight. The library service level is not changing in any way. We have a few priorities for the 2024 budget, including aligning with our strategic goals and being prepared for the Access Center. So all budgetary increases and inflationary pieces look to those pieces, to those goals. At the end of 2022, the library passed a new strategic plan with the priorities of being growing out into the community, removing barriers, and sustainability and good stewardship. So when we created the 2024 budget and as we worked through 2023, these were always our priorities. As you can see in the 2024 outlook, the big budget requests here are that $50,000 are being budgeted into the listable branch reserve going forward in the next 3 years, and that's again to prepare directly for the Access Center. So when that project is shovel ready, the request to council is not a shock, not that price tag shock. We've started to prepare for that piece. As council knows, the library budget is mostly funded by our community. The province provides the library about $23,000, and that's not changed since 1996. So it's not a lot of money. So it is a library for this community, so we geared towards our priorities here. $20,000 we've been taking from our administrative reserve to create our own website. Board priority right now is to create a really strong library brand. And if you can see our media in the community, we already have done a lot of that work, and we hope to continue that in 2024, really pushing something really cohesive and usable and accessible, alongside that strategic priority of removing barriers. We do have a correction in our budget. You'll see in the administrative line. We work alongside municipal staff to find facilities budgets, and there was, we went through the cost this year to make sure we were actually paying true costs. Again, something we want to be prepared for the Access Center when the municipality maybe no longer owns that building and we would have to pay rent to a third party. Those are the biggest differences in our budget this year. Luckily, we aligned with 6 of the municipal strategic priorities as well, and we'll work towards projects aligning our services and our partnerships, our continued partnerships. As you've heard, we do a lot of partnerships with our municipal staff members, which has been value added for both of our mutual departments that way. You can see within our work plan, it's all of our work is maintaining that service level in our communities, as well as aligning with our strategic priorities, as well as continuing those partnership projects, including sitting on that DEI committee that the municipality has started. But really, our budget has already been approved by our library board, and we bring it here for review for council. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Whalen. Are there any questions at this time? Okay. Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, staff, for your presentations. Next, we're going to be looking at the operating budget combined. I think we have it up on the screen here. And Ms. Belfour, would you be available for any questions for this? Okay. Okay, so looking at the combined budget, are there any questions or points of clarification that council has at this point? Okay. All right, so seeing none. Our next item on the agenda is our budget and visioning session and comments. So if we can just pull, if you're able to pull those up, thank you. So council, you remember these were our comments that came out of our visioning session earlier this year, which was our first meeting in the budget process. So this is a refresher for everyone to remember what we discussed at that point. Seeing what we've seen tonight from our staff and comparing it to our visioning session comments, are there any points of clarification or any questions or further discussion that anybody on council would like to have at this point? So I did have one, just with Mr. Newell, was just regarding the pool. I know that came up at the capital, our capital budget. Just looking again, want to understand what our expectations are for the pool going forward this year, and then leading into potentially a new pool. So I want to make sure that we're understanding the costs that we're going to be putting into that existing facility before we go any further with a new facility. So I'm just wondering if you could just give us a little bit more clarification on the pool cost for the next, let's say, 2 years.
So we had planned for aquatic facility drawings as approved in this year's budget, this current year's budget. So we're in that process right now of having the drawings done. That will give us, once those are completed, we'll have a better idea of the direction for the pools, and a report will come to council, or a delegation will come to council to explain the concepts that RAC will also have a chance to look at, hopefully tomorrow night. And then that would give us a better idea of costing over the next year or two for the pool. So right now, I believe it was $60,000 we had budgeted for the drawings. That's all that's being spent in this current year.
Okay, no, that's helpful. And I did note that it was going to go to the RAC committee as well. So thank you for that clarification.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions at this point, Councillor, or any points of clarification? Okay. All right. So seeing none, we'll move to our next item on the agenda, which is council direction. This is the section where us as councillors can provide direction to our staff. Again, anything that we had questions about, or anything that we want a little bit more information about, pretty much anything that was discussed tonight would be open at this point. So I'll open the floor up to councillors for comments. Yeah, go ahead, CEO Snell.
The one item that wasn't in the budget that was discussed most recently in a council meeting was some, I believe, one-time grant money to the school bus project. So I guess staff's looking for a little bit of direction of the dollar amount that council's looking to contribute to that project. I know at the presentation it was 10 buses worth $33,000. Were we looking to put in for a pilot project of 10 buses, or just looking for some initial direction because we have to add that number to this budget yet.
Yeah, thanks, CO Snell. That's a great point. I know that just came up on Monday, so we may not have had council may not have had a lot of time to give much thought about that. Maybe CO Snell for our clarification. I know that Mr. Chapman, when he did his presentation, he had mentioned the possibility of potential private sources of funding for this. I know it's, again, only been a couple days. Is there any inclination that may be something that we could explore?
I guess I'm struggling with the aspect, is this our project or are we just funding the project? We don't have the expertise, and so I assume we would just be sort of becoming a contributor to the project. So if we were to give some money, I would think it would be up to the school bus transportation systems themselves to look at how they raise the additional dollars. But I'm not sure. I just don't see it being our project because we don't have the expertise or the knowledge to operate the system.
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor Kasenberg.
I'm wondering at this point if it's urgent to staff to actually worry about allocating that funds until council's had a fulsome discussion on this. I mean, I think, we have a process that we're trying to unfold and that a discussion would be planned for next meeting, right? So do you feel a real sense of urgency to put the number in there, or can we wait till council disposes of this?
I guess it depends. I guess just how comfortable council is with the overall number. Obviously, adding $33,000 is not a big jump, but it will take the budget percentage up.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Mayor Kasenberg. I just feel a little bit would like to wait for the report if possible on Monday night. I think we have quite a few unanswered questions at this point. And the other piece of this as well is Councillor Rothwell is not here tonight, and everyone will know this was originally his notice of motion. I know it's a movement that he's been very much behind and very much pushing. So if it's council's will, I would like to wait for. Yeah, go ahead, Vice Chair Nordum.
It's going to next council meeting, and there's a number or an amount that you'd like to do. We can on the 29th. It won't go to public because I won't have that information in time, but we can certainly give you some numbers as percentages on the fly that night, if that will help.
Yeah, I'd certainly be comfortable with that. I don't, council's, that's okay with council. I think we'll go with that, Ms. Belfour. Thank you. Okay, in terms of further council direction, were there any other councillors that had anything that they wanted to bring forward at this time? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you. Chair Instead, I'm just wondering, at a future budget meeting, will we be kind of looking at there's a lot of new projects that are in the works. So for instance, the transportation master plan is an example, and I know that's probably more of a capital project, but we're having a report on December 11th. So I guess I'm just wondering, at the next meeting for budget consideration, will we have some more updates, do we think, on other capital projects that might need to be considered at that time?
Well, that's a great question, Councillor Anderson. I'll let staff weigh in as well. You may remember we did mention that we're having another meeting on the 29th. That was originally marked as tentative. We are going to have that. And the purpose of that meeting was to recap our capital and also to look at any updates and changes to operating at that point. So I'll let staff weigh in, but I would think at that point if there's any questions or any items that require further clarification, that would be the forum to bring those forward. If that's fair, CO Snell.
So on the 29th, we do plan on bringing, I would say, some minor capital allocation changes forward to council, changes that just further refining our own numbers. Most of the significant capital costs that we anticipate coming out of things like the master planning has already been included in the future down the road capital forecasting that we've done as staff. So that includes things like the pool. Those things may or may not happen, but we've tried to forecast them in the future capital budget forecasts.
Okay. No, that's fair. Thank you. Any other councillors with any other questions or comments at this point? Any other questions for staff? I guess I'll ask staff, do you feel that you have appropriate direction from council at this point, or is there anything that you would like some more clarification on?
I guess as long as council is generally satisfied with where we're sitting at with the budget, I think we've got the information we need.
Okay. Go ahead, Mayor Kaysenberg.
Do we have a read at all about the impacts of growth in terms of what the final rate will be that ratepayers might pay for 2024?
We don't have that number right now, but we will have that number for the 29th.
Okay.
Yeah, we're hoping.
So there will be some offsets. I mean, I think sometimes media watching looks and it will be reported there's an 8.65% increase on the table. What they don't understand is that growth and the impacts of growth can actually scale that back somewhat, as it did last year in a substantial way. It may not be as substantial this year because the growth rate was not at the same hot clip that it was 2 years ago. But certainly we would want it clear, at least I think, for the media, and Chair Anstett, maybe you can help with this, that this number, it may move up or down a shave in any direction, but this is not the actual number impact yet that the taxpayer will actually see as a percent growth on their tax bill.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mayor Kaysenberg, and we did have a meeting last week, Vice Chair Nordum and myself and Ms. Balfour and the finance team, and again, that was discussed. The number that's the first number is not necessarily where we're going to end up, and I think that we just need to be clear in our communications to the public that, again, this number may change, and that's not a set number in stone. Okay, any other questions? Comments? Okay. All right. So at that point, we'll be looking for our confirmatory bylaw. Just read it here. Bylaw 139/2023 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth is hereby passed. Moved by Mayor Kaysenberg, seconded by Vice Chair Nordum. We'll have the vote for that, please. And that is carried. Thank you. And we've reached the point where we are at item number 10, which is adjournment. I'll be looking for a motion to declare this meeting adjourned at 9:08 p.m. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Have that vote, please. Missing one. Okay, manual vote for Councillor Andreessen in favor. That's carried. Thank you.